So it all starts now. How are you feeling about the next 6 weeks?
Well, I'm up for it. I'm looking forward to it. I always enjoy campaigning. As much as I like being in Parliament, I always enjoy being out on the campaign trail, and that goes for all of the Shadow Cabinet and all Labour MPs as well. So I'm really looking forward to taking our message out across the country in the next 6 weeks and winning that general election.
Can we start with that little idea that Susanna and I were talking about on the introduction here, that Jeremy Corbyn is going to name specific rich millionaires who he feels your policies are going to target, setting up your position as party of the people. We're sort of living in very febrile times. We've had lots of MPs standing down at this election, 50 of them walking away, many of them citing the issues with the personal attacks that they've received because of what's going on. Are you comfortable with the idea that Jeremy Corbyn is going to specifically identify 3 or 4 individuals that he believes are taking advantage of the situation?
Firstly, to call some of these people millionaires is really underestimating their value. Some of them are billionaires, like.
But they're still real people, though. That's the point, isn't it? Regardless of their wealth and what they've managed to achieve, they are real people that he's about to specifically target.
They're people who are examples of how an unfair system works.
Well, regardless of their employment situation and what they've managed to achieve, many people would argue that they employ hundreds of thousands of people around the country. You are comfortable with the fact that they are going to be personally singled out and identified in an environment where some MPs are calling the situation dehumanising, Nicky Morgan stepping down because of the abuse that her family have taken, the impact that this has had on them, that these individuals are going to be personally put up there by Jeremy Corbyn, undoubtedly are going to face more abuse and attacks?
Well, I think people like Mike Ashley do take the decision personally to push a rigged system to its limits and treat workers appallingly at places like Sports Direct, at places like these warehouses. But of course, what I would say is we're not about demonising individuals at all. And those who are responsible for demonising individuals are a government that's had a hostile environment against migrants, a government that's had really also a hostile environment demonising people on social security, people on universal credit. So I think really we do need a kinder, gentler type of politics, but we also need a kinder, gentler type of system, a system that doesn't treat the majority unfairly and often brutally and let those at the very top get off without fulfilling their social responsibilities, whether that be tax or whether that be treating other people decently, including their workers.
That's interesting because Jeremy Corbyn said that it's going to be a harder, dirtier campaign. You've just talked about a kinder, gentler approach. Which is it?
Well, we need a kinder, gentler society. I think it's pretty obvious that it's going to be a hard and harsh campaign. We need to ensure that different people's views are treated with respect. I think, for example, both MPs who are categorised as being more towards Remain and MPs who are categorised as being more towards Leave, regardless of party, have been abused, and that's unacceptable. And I do think that this is an election which takes place in febrile times, and that's why we're going to be focusing on a message of hope to bring people together for a better future for our country, because people watching this programme this morning actually deserve better than the lot they've been given by a rotten, rigged system which sees people at the top get away, as I say, paying less tax than people watching your programme are about to go to work. It can't be right if billionaires are paying less tax than people watching this programme. It's just not right.
But, Richard Burgon, if they're paying less tax within the law, surely the issue is changing the law, not naming and shaming people who you may have an issue with the amount of money that they earn and the amount of money that they may be saving. But if they're doing it legally, it's the responsibility of the government to tackle that systemically, not individually, name and shame them.
And the Labour government will tighten the law and tackle tax avoidance and tax evasion in a way that's fair and in a way that also benefits our economy and our public services. But also, I don't think we should tar everyone with the same brush. Julian Richer, for example, a guy who runs Richer Sounds, he's written a very interesting book called The Ethical Capitalist. He's proud, as many top business people are, to pay his fair share of taxes. So actually, by going after the people who really play the system. What we're also doing is standing up for the majority of responsible business people who are put at an unfair advantage by those who don't really approach things in the fair and reasonable way that they should do.
I'm not sure, unless they're doing something illegal, I'm not sure how you're targeting them. I mean, increased tax, that might be a policy. Crack down on tax evasion, people will completely understand. But just because someone has been successful, it seems like that's a class war to some.
No, the class war actually is a situation where, if you look at the amount of tax paid by Amazon, one of my colleagues uncovered this the other day, if you apply that tax rate that they've been paying to a person watching this programme getting paid £30,000 a year, the person watching this programme getting paid £30,000 a year will be paying £17 a year in tax. That's not right. And it's not just about people obeying the law. There are very powerful people in this country that are employing the best lawyers in the world to find every new loophole to get out of paying money towards our schools and hospitals.
So it's cracking down on loopholes. OK. Let me just talk to you about Brexit, because a lot of people think this is the Brexit election. And for many people, as you've already identified, some of the other issues might get lost in the mix. But Brexit is the reason this election's been called, because the government cannot get a deal through Parliament. So the Labour policy on Brexit, you campaigned and voted Remain in the 2016 referendum. In 2017, you ran on a manifesto to leave. What is Labour saying this time round?
Labour's saying, 3 years down the line, let the people decide. A Labour government will put it to the people in terms of a credible leave option or Remain, and let the people decide. I think people have had enough of politicians telling them what to do on this issue. We need to let the people decide, get the matter resolved, and move forward to build that better society.
Wouldn't a lot of your voters say that they've already decided? They decided in 2016.
Well, what they didn't decide to support, whether people voted Leave or Remain, was to support a Donald Trump, Boris Johnson trade deal relating to our National Health Service being up for grabs with multinational United States of America corporations. People didn't support that, and we've now got a deeply untrustworthy Prime Minister who will do anything to get his way. So I think a lot has changed. I think the best way is the Labour policy of letting the people decide, letting the people put a full stop on this one way or the other by that vote, credible leave option or Remain.
And which way would you vote?
Well, what I would be doing is listening to my constituents, speaking to members of my local Labour Party once Labour has obtained that credible leave option from the European Union, which we think we could do in less than 3 months, or really in a matter of weeks after taking government.
So if it's a credible leave option, you'd be voting for leave?
Well, as I say, I'd see what the option was. I'd listen to my constituents. The Labour Party as well would be having a special one-day conference to decide how we, as politicians and as a party, approach campaigning in that public vote, and then we'd make our decision.
But if it's a credible leave option that the Labour Party have negotiated, then you'd vote for it?
Well, I've just set out what will happen.
But Richard, sorry, Mr Burgon, I'm sorry. The Tories say they want to get Brexit done. The Lib Dems say they want to stop Brexit. The Brexit Party, the clue's in the name. I don't understand what Labour's position is on Brexit. You're going to go and negotiate a credible leave deal, but you can't say that the senior politicians in the Labour Party would then back it. Well, so if I'm voting Labour, am I voting to leave the EU, or am I going to remain as part of the EU?
Well, you're voting not only in relation to Brexit, but in relation to a whole host of other things, but in relation to Brexit, you'd be voting to let the people decide. It's as simple as that. It's not really about what this individual politician or that individual politician
Well, it is if you're then going to go out and campaign for one of the options. It's exactly what the Labour politicians... If you get into government, I want to know what you're campaigning for.
On the issue of Brexit, we would be putting the power back in the hands of the people, letting the people decide once and for all. That distinguishes from the other parties that you've mentioned, because we're determined to let the people decide.
So I
And
don't
there's
know
most
what the
important thing.
Labour Party's policy on Brexit is, whether it's leave or remain. I don't know what your individual policy is. I don't know what this new deal is that you're going to negotiate. We had a referendum in 2016 where the people decided. We had a general election in 2017 where you stood on a Leave manifesto, and now it just seems to be a muddle.
Well, our manifesto also said back in 2017 that we'd respect and accept the outcome of the referendum, but that we would do everything we can to stop a disastrous no-deal Brexit. And that's why we were pleased to pressure the government so they couldn't push us out with a no-deal Brexit. We got no-deal Brexit off the table by ensuring that that extension had to be granted and was until the 31st of January. This election is about far more than Brexit.
Yes.
It's about living standards.
But of course,
it's about jobs and the economy. But when it comes to Brexit, our policy really isn't hard to understand.
Well,
Hundreds of thousands of people have marched for this policy.
Richard,
and the policy is quite simple. Let the people decide.
We know we need to let you go, but as Susanna, I mean, we live and breathe this. We do this every single day. We talk to politicians. We try and understand exactly where everyone's going. There are people around the country that don't live it and breathe it and have had enough of it. But when Susanna's pointing out quite clearly the confusion and the muddle that she's trying to pick through, and she's a pretty bona fide expert on this with the amount that we've done, relatively.
About that, to be fair.
But can you appreciate why there is real confusion as the Labour perspective on that issue? And regardless of the fact that you want to get it onto the domestic issues, which other people are interested in, this is still a really fundamentally important interview.
I understand. I think we've got to be careful as politicians and as commentators not to underestimate the intelligence of the public. I think people are more than capable of understanding that Labour's policy, let the people decide between a credible leave option and remain, is quite simple. I'd say it's the correct policy, but that's for the people to decide in this general election.
And just before we let you go, is Jeremy Corbyn, does he want to remain in the EU or does he want to leave the EU?
Well, he wants to let the people decide.
Does he not have a personal view?
Well, I'm sure he'll be outlining his personal views in great detail during the course of this general election campaign.